what's going to happen and how is the city going to protect themselves because they have insurance for such a thing. If it gets to be overly problematic, and this is just my opinion, but this is what will happen in the industry, if the risk becomes too great, the police forces will still be able to get insurance. They'll just remove, certain risk out of it. So they might say, listen, we'll still give you insurance, but if a cop kills somebody and it's found out later that it was homicide, we're not covering that.
Wow.
So for instance, here in California, a lot of insurance companies offered earthquake insurance right up to the Northridge quake.
That's right.
It almost put them out of business. So,
That's right.
So companies like Farmers and State Farm, nobody offers their own insurance anymore because their own earthquake insurance anymore because if a big enough quake hits, those companies will go out of business. So it's offered now through the California Earthquake Authority. So you have to buy a separate policy for that.
It is a separate policy now.
Risk can still be covered. You can still cover risk. It's just it will end up being its own separate endorsement, and it will cost a lot more money.
So that answers that question.
No, that totally makes sense, and that's interesting. It's things you never even think about.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like I said, Mike thinks of those things for us, and when he mentions them, it scares us.
I just feel like I'm sure there's like some little newbie that's like going around doing a company that didn't even realize that they needed insurance and then just got sued, and then they were like, oh.
I wish I would have.
Yeah.
And that's what this is about, is so that we can bring awareness to small businesses that you need to have insurance coverage and you need to talk to someone about the coverage that's experienced and knows exactly what you need and is going to ask you the right questions so you're covered correctly. Because there's nothing worse than having coverage but you're not covered correctly for what you do.
Well, I would agree with you on that point. The only thing that's almost as bad as not having insurance is not having the right kind and the right coverage, because it would infuriate me to find out after paying thousands of dollars a year every year that the one time I need it, oh, sorry, we don't cover that.
Right.
For instance, if you're a restaurant, you want to have spoilage coverage. Spoilage coverage means if your refrigeration unit goes down and you have $20,000 worth of inventory or more sitting there and it spoils overnight because of power outage, you don't want to find out that you weren't covered for that. That's a big burden on a family restaurant to turn around and then replace all that food.
Yes, that's the wrong time to find out it wasn't covered.
I would not want to be the agent that gets the phone call saying, oh no, we didn't put that in the policy because it would have cost you $100 a year more and we didn't think you wanted to pay that.
So Mike, if someone wanted to speak with you, because obviously you're going to give them the right answers, or you're going to ask the right questions, what would be your contact information?
Easiest way to reach me is through Beach Financial Group. Our office phone number is 310-414-2100. I'm the only Mike there.
That's right.
And if they wanted to send an email, it's mike@beachfinancialgroup.com. It's beach like the ocean, not the tree.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, people want to spell it.
Well,
They never want to spell it the way it's said. It's too easy.
They're like, it has to be more difficult.
Exactly.
So Mike, how long have you been in the insurance business, and what made you decide to go into this business?
Well, my pat answer to that is, man, it feels like forever. So, but the reality is, I will tell you this. I did not grow up going, wow, I can't wait to sell insurance someday. I just didn't. I never met anybody who did. When I got to be 19 and realized I wouldn't be playing center field for the Phillies anymore, and then when I got to be 27 and realized I wouldn't be flying fighter jets anymore, I went into the regular business world like everybody. I was in medical supply sales. The insurance chair was pulled out for me on 2 other occasions, and I said, no way, who wants to sell insurance? Like, I couldn't think of anything worse in life. It's like one of the worst stereotypes that there is, right? The pushy insurance salesman. Nobody wants to pay for it. I hate paying for insurance. I mean, I can't stand paying for insurance, but you have to have it. So I was in the software industry for 15 years. I was in the supply chain side, making CDs and boxes and shipping stuff all over the country and working with big companies like Walmart and Target, and got downsized. And when I was downsized, the marketplace told me after a while, we don't want you and your services anymore. So I was looking for the next big thing. And I have a brother-in-law back in Pennsylvania who works for State Farm. And he's a really nice guy and he's smart, but I thought, Tom's not smarter than I am. I could do this. So I actually called him up and spoke to him and my sister and said, hey, what do you guys think? And they said, yeah, you could do this. So went into the insurance industry. The first thing I did is I went online, found study guides. You have to take a 52-hour test to pass your property test. You have to take you have to have 52 hours of study, which is 12 hours of ethics and 40 hours of study for a property and casualty license, and then another 40 hours for your accident and health license. Then you have to go take a state exam, and you have to be able to pass those independently. And I did all that in about 30 days just to get them both out of the way.
Wow.
And had an opportunity to go to Farmers Insurance and learn the business.
That's amazing. And that's another thing I don't think people realize is that when you're talking to an insurance agent, he has to be licensed and he has to have a certain number of hours required. And then don't you have to continue in your education throughout your licensing period? So no matter how long you're an insurance salesperson, you still have to go back and take additional classes. Is that right?
Absolutely. So every here in California, your license comes up for renewal every 2 years. Mm-hmm. And when it does, the state will tell you which continuing education courses that you need. So ethics is always a big one. You always have to go back and refresh your ethics courses, because obviously we are dealing with we're dealing with people's livelihood, with their money. We're making a lot of key decisions for people. So, ethics, you can't steal, cheat, and lie. But unfortunately, there's people who actually just learn that for the first time when they actually take the ethics course, that you can't do that. And then, of course, you have to, things change all the time.
Right.
All insurance is controlled at the state level. So what's accurate for California is not accurate for Florida. My mother lives in Florida. She asked me to review her policy, and I had some things.
Please say hello to her.
I will. I'll tell her. I was just talking to Rosemary this morning. So there's things on her policy, homeowner's policy in Florida, that were completely alien to me. I didn't understand what they were, but I said, go back to your agent and ask him, what does this mean? And she went back and got some answers. But just like he probably wouldn't really fully understand some of the requirements that California has. So things change on a legislative level, and you have to be up to speed on that. And so there's constant continuing education requirements.
Okay. Now,
it's like anything else. You'd want to know your craft as best you possibly can, because as things change, you need to be able to inform the public what's going on.
Right. As earthquakes happen.
Definitely.
Happen. California rocks.
It's
the CEA says that. I don't know.
So, Mike, something you said in there that I want to go back to. You said that you changed careers out of necessity, mm-hmm. because your company downsized, and then the type of work that you were doing, it wasn't a large demand for anymore. So you had to shift what you were comfortable with and do something else. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that needs to be brought to light, because a lot of times when, as companies downsize and as we get more and more automated, less and less jobs will be available. And in that space, that's usually the perfect time to start your own business, because you're an independent contractor, really, and you work, and if you don't, if you're in sales, so there's no paycheck waiting for you at the end of the week without work being put in for mm-hmm. it. And not to take away from a salary position, but yours is not that. So sometimes when people get downsized or are out there looking for work, you might want to look within and figure out what you're really good at and start working towards that. Because although we're talking about insurance today, we're also talking about small businesses. And Elizabeth made a great point. She said, we were doing, just that. We were helping everyone we knew we were doing what they did not know how to do, and it turned into a job that once you asked for pay for, people were willing to pay for, and she honed her craft in helping them. So it was like, one hand helped the other, and now she's in a position to ask for her worth for her work, because it's a value add for a small business. So in that strain, I think sometimes people don't realize that their gifts and talents, there is room for it. There's a place where you can hone those talents and sell them. And if you listen long enough, if enough people ask you to do the same thing for them over and over and over again, that might be a business. And if that is a business, you need to talk to professionals to see what liabilities surround that business. Mm-hmm. Because in doing it for free, if I'm doing something for free, can I still be sued? If Elizabeth asks me to, do something for her and I do it and it harms her, can she sue me?
Charliane, this is America. Anybody can be sued anytime for any reason.
Right. So
That's just the way it is.
And I brought that up because I knew that would be your answer. So just because you're doing something and not being paid for it does not mean you're not liable. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, pay has very little to do with whether or not you're liable for somebody's injuries. You know, the guy you hit walking down the street with your car didn't pay you to Uber him and then have him step in front of the car, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is, you know, if you're doing anything if you're interacting with anybody, whether it's on a entity to entity basis or, you know, person to person basis, you can do something that either inadvertently injures them or harms them, and you could be, if you're found liable, you will be held financially responsible for that. And one of the things that insurance does, it can help take care of all of that or some of that, or a good portion of it, and you know, just help you sleep easier at night by that. If you don't have it, if you don't have the money, people think, well, you can't get blood out of the rock, but the government can get blood out of a rock. Trust me, they will squeeze it until they get the blood out of it. So if you're not protected properly, wages are garnished, assets. If you don't have assets to sell, they'll garnish your wage. And I don't know anybody that could survive on a 25% tax for 10 or 15 years to pay off a $50,000 debt because they hit somebody with their car and they incurred $50,000 worth of medical bills. That would be a huge burden that would last for a very long time. It would change the entire trajectory of a family, in my opinion. You may be going along and everything's great in life, and man, now you've got to make some tough decisions. And if you have kids or you have a spouse, nothing's good that's going to come out of this. Nothing.
That's right. That's right. So on a personal level and on a business level, you need to speak to an agent and make sure that the agent you speak to is qualified in the area that you need them in. So Mike, give your information one more time for our listeners.
Sure. It's Beach Financial Group. The phone number is 310-414-2100. And my email address is mike@beachfinancialgroup.com.
That's wonderful. This is Miss Charlene, and you're having lunch with the Finance Bunch, and we're here on Accelerated Radio every Friday from noon till 1. You can also see my show on YouTube, and and the person who edits and puts my YouTubes up is our Elizabeth, who's sitting in the studio today talking about that. And so, Elizabeth, when you're working with people, what are some of the things that we, as your clients, ask you to do that take quite a bit of time, that we don't realize take a lot of time? What are some of those things?
Oh gosh, it's definitely time consuming, but it's fun. But editing is a very interesting process where it's a lot of watching the same thing over and over and over and trying to make a good transition cut from one angle to another. So just the editing alone takes a while. Editing it properly to where you can get a good intro and outro to put it onto YouTube takes a while. And I have an amazing partner who does the graphics for like intro logos for all of our clients. And that alone can take a day, depending on how complex they want it. So it's like I guess you could say a quote basis or what they have envisioned in their mind. Like some people kind of go crazy and don't realize how time consuming it is.
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, I want, sparkles to come down from the sky and me to look like a princess with wings flying through the wind as my intro starts. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, that'll probably take 2 to 3 days to do. And
right.
that's going to cost you a lot of money. We don't mind doing it, or just a simple name graphic that just pops in and twirls and then signs off and then there you are. Those kinds of things can take a while, take a lot less time and a lot less money. But it's just kind of interesting because as you were talking about California, I feel like, wow, it's state to state. It's funny now to know that each state has different insurance policies. Mm-hmm. And I'm working in a state that is, as I've heard, very Sue happy.
Oh yes,
yeah.
Which makes me wonder what's worse, the insurance or the people. Like, is it because they can sue people easily because the insurance, there's a lot of loopholes, or it's just this state?
Why is it this way? That's a good question, Mike. Would you know the answer to that?
Well, I don't know the answer. I'll give you my own opinions. First of all, we're the most populous state in the country.
That's very true.
Right, so you have a lot of people interacting. We also have a lot of big industries here, like the entertainment industry.
That's very true.
My guess would be is that we have an awful lot of independent business people too. So when you look at things like studios or people who
like entrepreneurs,
who are sitting home, they may be doing studio work, but they never leave their house, kind of thing.
That's true.
So you start having all of these interests that are out there inevitably colliding, or they're going to collide at some point. So I think that probably brings it. And then, of course, I think that there's, unfortunately, I think that a lot of people think that there's an easy way out, right? So I'll just sue somebody and I'll make the money and I'll get money that way. And I think what all of us need to realize is every time that happens, every time you hear somebody that's filing a frivolous suit or they're involved in a way with something, we all ultimately pay for that. If an insurance company has